we'll hand over to you now to begin. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me here today. Happy Sabbath. My name's Aaron Sen, and I'm the Bible worker for IPR in America. I was part of this initiative because I used to believe November 5th was the Sunday. Did I lose you? Say it again. I'm part of this initiative because I used to believe November the 5th was the Sunday law. But I've dropped November 5th now. It wasn't sustainable. And now I believe July 18th was the Sunday law. I forgot to say, please just shout out any questions. Or if you want me to repeat something, just interrupt, shout out. Okay, I'll give you just a quick, brief explanation as to why I switched. So I was saying that January the 6th points to November the 5th. I used to say attack on democracy, January 6th. Fall of democracy, November 5th, when they vote in a known dictator. And the main evidence I used to back that up was the mark of the beast. And I should say the mark of the beast test. I said voting for Trump is receiving the mark of the beast. And none of the other dates had the people doing anything. That's it. None of the other dates had the people doing anything. The ordinary. Say it again. So that's why I was so convinced about November the 5th. Because I used to say, how do people get the mark of the beast? On July 18th or January 20th or whatever. And Elder Terry answered that recently. I didn't hear. Elder Terry answered that recently. Which basically destroyed my main evidence. She said the National Sunday Law is the mark of the beast waymark. But the people don't get tested until they've heard all the lights, the message, which would be loud cry, and then the people are tested. So they're not tested at the Sunday law or market feast way. And without going into detail here, that made a lot of sense to me. And also, in the last few weeks, Elder Terry answered some other questions I had about July 18th. Exactly who the seventh head is, and things like that. Okay, I'll move on to the study, but any questions or thoughts so far on that? Okay, so today I'm going to go from the perspective of the death of the King of the South. And I'm saying it identifies a Sunday law, but you know it's not this national Sunday law, because this is already in the past, July 18th. Okay, now we've always taught in this movement, hold on, let's just say until now, in this movement, we have taught that the death of the King of the South is just one complete and final death. I know we've taught deadly wound, then death, but the death is just a one-stage death, not two-stage. Oh, sorry, I should let me introduce the board work. Sorry, I've got to step back a bit. Okay, you remember Elder Terry, I think, in Fiji. She presented the lines of pagan Rome, papal Rome, and modern Rome. I haven't included the line of papal Rome here, just because I'm not going to be using it or drawing any applications. And when I say modern Rome, we know that Rome or the papacy has nothing to do with end time events. So I'm only using that term because that was the old model. Pagan Rome, papal Rome, modern Rome. But it might be more correct to say the King of the North. And very simply put, the King of the North is going to be America. Or more precisely, since 1989, the Republican Party. Okay, so on the line of pagan Rome, This could be taken from Daniel 8:9. And it basically says that Rome takes down 3 geographic areas. One, two, three, before it rules the world supremely. And it rules for a time, 360 years. So those 3 territories in Daniel 8:9 are the east, when Syria was taken down, 64 BC. And when Rome takes Syria, they become the king of the north. Which is a really easy way to show you that the king of the north was born here in 1989. And then they take down the pleasant land, which is the same as the glorious land, in 63 BC. So you can see why that would line up with the glorious land being taken in Daniel 11. Daniel 11:41, he enters into the glorious land. America. And then the third area to be taken down is the south, which is Egypt. Okay, so that's that line which is lined up with our lines. And Elder Terry has already put in place the worldwide Sunday law at Daniel 12:1. And that's also been established truth since the beginning. I think it's common Adventist. Okay, any thoughts? Okay, so Elder Jeff taught from Daniel 11:14. That this is 1991, and the death of the king of the south was here, 1989 to 1991. And then the next verse, verse 41, is the National Sunday. And Jeff taught that this was the complete and final death of the king of the south, Russia. So I'll put complete there for now. But we know that Elder Tess, I'll say corrected it. Elder Tess says, history repeats. and that anium is the deadly wound. And then at the National Sunday Law, you get the death of the King of the South. So she's saying this history repeats. And the way Elder Test taught it is that this would be the complete and final death of the King of the South. Okay, all good so far? Any thoughts, questions? Okay, so now I'd like to compare and contrast this King of the South with the King of the North. King of the South with the King of the North. Okay. So Daniel 11:41. King of the North enters into the glorious land. Now, in the most simple terms, so simple that it's technically wrong. But just to make this point, I'm going to say that the King of the North is America. And the glorious land is America. So how does America defeat America? Doesn't seem to make sense. How does America overthrow itself? So basically that would be an internal victory. Internal, inside the United States. That's not a new concept to us. In the words of Elder Tess, it would be civil war or revolution, counter-revolution. Or war on the Western Front. So now we know. Sorry, start again. So at Sunday law, you get an internal victory for the King of the North. Internal victory, King of the North. Is that clear? Any questions? Yes. I think that's something Elder Terry figured out, and I think she's presented that already.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey.
Sorry, you'd need to repeat Justina's questions because those on the English channel can't hear her.
Okay, so Justina
so if you can
said
after Justina.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Okay. So Justina asked, is it correct that the King of the North is the Republican Party? And I think that's correct. It's quite new, but I think I'm right in saying that. I hope so. Okay, so carry on. Okay, so we've taught since the beginning of the movement. And I think it's just common Adventism, because Ellen White says this. That first, Sunday laws passed in America. And I'm using Ellen White, so I mean the 1888 model. Literal Sunday law versus Sabbath. And then it gets passed country by country until it's passed in every country of the world. And then we used to place the universal Sunday law at Daniel 12. Or we'll call it the worldwide Sunday. So the King of the North takes down 3 geographic areas before it rules the world supremely. And at the worldwide Sunday law, that's just the beginning of the 7th head ruling the world. So here you had the internal victory for the King of the North inside America. Which means here you have an external victory for the King of the North. At Daniel 12:1. External, because it's all the other countries outside of America. Okay, so you could call the external victory a complete victory. So once you've taken down all the countries of the world, there's no more countries to take down. So the external victory is a complete. So we said we're comparing the King of the North to the King of the South. And now you can see this compare and contrast is starting to break down. It's not working. Because here Elder Tess said this is the complete death of the King of the South. By the way, I should have crossed this out because this is wrong here. That's not the complete death of the King of the South. So Elder Tess taught the complete death of the King of the South at National Sunday Law. But when you compare and contrast with the King of the North, you can see the complete victory comes at Daniel 12:1. So does it make sense that the complete death of the King of the South should actually come at Daniel 12:1?
Hello, Aaron. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Um, I watched your recent studies pertaining to the King of the South. death. And it was in the context of November the 5th, of course, but now we no longer have that date. And you were talking of the spheres of influence of the King of the South being taken one by one, or at least the King of the South was losing these spheres of influence in a progressive fashion. And you identified Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Syria. So my question is, to which history does that loss
Liberty,
belong to
please
now?
can you pause between your sentences because Justina is translating.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So my question was, or is, to which waymark now does that history of loss of the spheres of influences by the King of the South belong to? To the National Sunday Law or to the worldwide Sunday Law? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay. Do I need to repeat the question in English? Did everyone hear it? Yeah. Okay, so we're asking, where is the loss of the spheres of influence for the King of the South? If we're about to teach that there's a two-stage death for the King of the South, then at which stage does the King of the South lose all its spheres of influence? Okay, really good question. So I'm just going to finish this compare and contrast, and that's actually exactly where I'm going to go. You mentioned all the loss of the Middle Eastern proxies. And I'll cover that as well. Okay. So this compare and contrast is starting to break down. You've got the complete victory for the King of the North here. Elder Test taught the complete death of the King of the South was here. And we have a clue as to what kind of death is actually at National Sunday Law. Because this is an internal victory for the King of the North. So using parable methodology, compare and contrast, you can see this should just actually be the internal death of the King of the South. So I'm going to change complete to internal. And Elder Terry's already put that in place. She says that was the death of Navalny. Navalny. Okay. Now you can see this fits correctly. Now you can see this waymark fits correctly. And the concept of an internal death, the King of the South, is not new. It's when Elder Tess talked about it, she would present glasnost and perestroika, Russian words. And she would refer to those internal protests within the Soviet bloc. Which led to the death of the King of the South in 1991. And from memory, I think it was 2019. Didn't hear you. Should I say it again? Promise you. Are you there, Justina? Oh, you're back. Sure. So, from memory, I think it was 2019. When Elder Parminder said, King of the South kills itself. King of the North says to the King of the South, hey, King of the South, here's a sword. Why don't you kill yourself? King of the South says, okay, and kills itself. So an internal death of the King of the South is nothing new. We've just never made any application of it and never revisited it. Until now, when Elder Terry said it was the death or murder of Navalny. Okay, so if there's an internal death of the King of the South at National Sunday law, I'll just wait for Justina to come back. Oh, you're back. So if there's an internal death of the King of the South at the National Sunday law, there must be an external death of the King of the South at Daniel 12:1. Which then lines up with the external victory, the King of the North, Daniel 12. And it also lines up with 31 BC, which is the death of the South, according to Daniel 8:9. Does all that make sense so far?
I have got the question on that point. Aaron? Confirm, do you hear me?
If you're in the Shona channel, Aaron won't be able to hear your questions, Jerifanos. You'd need to come out of the channel, or Justina needs to then repeat your question to Aaron in English. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So can Justina repeat, please? My question is, identifying the king of the north as the Republican Party. And we are identifying the king of the north winning at the Sunday law. So if victory is winning over who? That is my question. It's coming because of your mentioning the Russian issue as an internal. That is my question.
Justina, can you summarize the question for me, please? Didn't really catch. Maybe you could type it out in the chat, then you could read it. If we've lost him.
It's okay. Thank you.
Carry on. Okay, so it looks like we should be putting the external death of the King of the South at the worldwide Sunday. And then that would match with, I'll say, the death of the King of the South. At 31 BC. Okay, so we said the external victory for the King of the North, external because it's outside of America. Which means the external death of the King of the South should be something outside of Russia. And I'm going to say that that's Ukraine. Okay, so internal death Navalny, external death Ukraine. And now I'll go back to Liberty's question. Why is it Ukraine and not all the proxies in the Middle East? Because around October, November, December, Hamas, Hezbollah were completely finished, also ineffective. And these are all proxies of the King of the South, Russia. Assad fled Damascus at the beginning of December. And end of October, 27th, I think, Israel flew jets into Iranian airspace. And destroyed all the Iranian air defenses. And they didn't lose a single jet or a single pilot. They were unchallenged. And the Houthis have never been a realistic or serious threat to Israel. Yeah, Israel's an American proxy. And I've taught that that was the death of the King of the South at November 5th, which is wrong. And this is another reason why I switched to July 18th. Something that Elder Parminder taught 10 or 12 years ago, I don't remember. Is that during the Cold War, you had two theaters back then as well. You had the Middle East, typically we identify the war in Afghanistan, we single that out. And then you had the European theatre. So same as today, Middle East proxies and European proxies. And the war in Afghanistan was won in 1989. But the King of the South didn't die until 1991. And it was the European theatre that actually killed the King of the South. So again, it's going to be the European theatre, Ukraine, that actually kills the King of the South. So we said that the external would be the complete death. So, okay, any thoughts, questions on that? Go ahead. Oh, I can read that. Oh, so simply the King of the North or the Republican Party is fighting who in the internal story? It's quite new to me. So you need to check with what elders Terry and Arminda have taught very recently. So, good question. I would say it's the Democratic Party. I'm wondering if you can say the institutions, maybe? Any thoughts from anyone? Is that correct, as everyone else understands it?
I want to try. I think from the line we can get glimpses into answering the question for me. That the king of the north is faced with three enemies. First, the east, the pleasant land, and the south. So looking into our history, we can see that the king of the north, born in 1989, has to take down the glorious land. And we have seen the complexity of having the king of the north itself being America, and glorious land itself being America as well. Regardless of that complexity, the king of the north is fighting against the glorious land internally. So whatever that may mean, these are two separate, I would call them institutions within the United States of America. So we've identified the king of the north as the Republican Party, and whoever or whatever is against the agenda of the Republican Party in America is that entity the king of the north is fighting against. Thank you.
Should I repeat that?
Yes, please, because people who are not in the Shona channel wouldn't have heard anything.
Okay, let me first check. I think that was Liberty. Does that mean you're agreeing with me that the King of the North is fighting the Democratic Party, the institution?
I agree.
I think I heard him say he does agree. Did you hear that?
I think
So,
I'm following.
Liberty was saying, answering the question, who's the King of the North fighting on the internal victory? And agree. And he's agreeing that the King of the North, the Republican Party, are fighting the Democratic Party. And then he went into something I mentioned earlier when I first wrote this up. How does the King of the North America overthrow the glorious land America? And basically, it's a fight between the Republicans and the Democrats. Okay, anything else? I don't usually keep an eye on the chat, so I suppose I should though. Okay, I'll read them. What is Ukraine in the fall of the King of the South? So we'll go into that now. Someone else says, I think it's the established democratic institutions they are fighting. Yes, I think that's correct. Okay, let me check my notes, and it's a good time to shout out if you have anything. Okay, so we've said the external and complete death of the king himself will be to do with the war in Ukraine. So at the moment, you see Trump dictating the terms of the peace deal. You saw what happened to Zelensky and Ukraine when Zelensky disagreed with Trump in the White House. Trump immediately cut off military aid to Ukraine. I think there was something else, I can't remember. But anyway, Trump uses a carrot and a stick. So the King of the North is leading out, is dominant in this peace deal. We might get to see what the King of the North does to the King of the South if Putin disagrees with Trump. So when the peace deal is actually enacted and the Ukraine war ends, that will be Putin agreeing to Trump's demands. In other words, in stronger language, that's Putin bowing to Trump. So there's a victory for the King of the North, in other words, a defeat for the King of the South. Trump is offering Putin a way out of this quagmire. So Putin really needs Trump. That's the balance of power. Zelensky or Ukraine need Trump for the same reason. Even to the point where they are being asked to sign over 50% of their mineral rights to America. I'm not sure I explained that very well. Does that make sense? That would be the end of the Ukraine war, would be the death of the King of the South.
I think so, Aaron.
Okay. Someone says they think they can see that. Okay, so to understand the model or the structure of the war in Ukraine, the person I think that's done the most work on that is Aryan. So I won't draw out his entire structure, his line. But what Aryan says is that you put the Ukraine war here at the National Sunday War. So he's not in agreement that it's July 18. Aryan is saying that the National Sunday Law began in February of 2025. And it will end at some point, at some stage of this peace deal. I just said loosely, the end of the Ukraine war. But I don't know if it's going to be the day the peace deal is signed, or when there's actually a ceasefire, or when the war actually ends. There's different stages to the peace deal. So Aryan is saying he's not too sure which stage of the peace deal his National Sunday Law will end. But what Elder Terry asked Aryan when she presented to the Netherlands she said something like, don't you think you found this waymark here? Elder Terry said to Aryan, the end of the Ukraine war, you, Aryan, you're saying it's the National Sunday Law. But don't you think that you've actually found the worldwide Sunday Law waymark? First witness is you've seen how we've put the external death of the King of the South here. Ukraine is external to Russia. I think it's the second witness that during the Cold War, it was the European front that killed the King of the South. I'll draw it in. I think it's correct to say that is a witness. And whether this is the second or the third witness, it's the South, or I'll say the King of the South, which is killed here. Daniel 12:1. Paralleling it with Daniel 8:9. Any thoughts? I think I'm done.
Hello? I just want to confirm something. There is something you mentioned about the specific dynamics of the war in Ukraine, and you were comparing or contrasting that to the losses I mentioned earlier of the Middle Eastern spheres of influence. You said not today that Russia has gained some land in Ukraine. And it looks like not a loss. Does that point still stand, considering what you have just said now? That Ukraine actually is the final nail to the coffin of Russia.
I didn't hear you very well, Lindsay, so and I'm going to repeat it anyway. You can check if I'm correct.
Okay.
When I was teaching November 5th, my argument against REM is something that Elder Tess said. She said that she thinks the death of the King of the South, which she placed that National Sunday, don't expect it to look like 1991, complete collapse of Russia. She said they'll probably just lose a proxy. And my argument against Arian's position is if you have Russia here, and you've got Ukraine here, and if Russia takes a bit of Ukraine and keeps it for the peace deal, then they don't lose a proxy. They actually gain 1/5 of the land of Ukraine, gain a proxy. Or gain 1/5 of a proxy. That was my argument. Does the argument make sense?
Well, very well it does.
Doesn't make sense. It does. It does. So that was my argument against Arian's position. So what I did was take basically one comment by Elder Tess. So what I did was just take one comment by Elder Tess where she just said the word probably. She wasn't using parable methodology. She was just using her own common sense. But when I was reminded of Elder Parminder's model, first the Middle East, Afghanistan, 1981. Then Europe, 1991. which actually kills the king of the south. There you have an actual model or a structure. Repeat of history, parable methodology. Which is so much stronger than just, I'll say, Tess had a hunch. You know, a hunch guess. Does that make sense? And these are all the collective reasons November the 5th. I knew it would just collapse, so I switched. Okay, I'm done. Any thoughts, any questions? Did everyone understand?
Probably this will be my last one. Fabius, Maximus, Gauges. Do you now agree on the usage of that name to the timing of the Sunday law? Yes or no?
So the question is, do I now agree on the timing and application of Quintus?
Yes.
I'm confident we can figure that out. And I'm just going to leave that for Elder Terry to figure it out one day, and I'm sure she'll present that. I'm okay with that. Let's pull that up. Okay. Did I already cover this one? What is the role of the evangelicals in the fall of democracy in the US? Evangelicals in the fall of democracy in the US. If the USA is fighting against itself, what or who is the king of the South? And what or who will be the king of the North? Okay, do you want to translate that question? Sure, of course. So first part, what is the role of the evangelicals in the fall of democracy in the USA? Okay, so to answer that one, my understanding of that hasn't actually changed. I don't know if Elder Terry or Elder Pominda might have presented some sort of change, tweaked it. But I still understand that the King of the North is church over state. I still understand that the King of the North is church over state. So I'm still thinking that Trump is doing exactly what the evangelicals want. Trump still knows that they are his base, you should say, main voters. Second part of the question. If the USA is fighting against itself, who or what is the king of the South? And who or what is the king of the North? Okay, so the king of the South is Russia, Putin. And the king of the North is specifically the Republican Party, Trumpism. Okay, does that answer that question? Okay, then the next question. If the king of the North is fighting Democratic Party, is it that the Democratic Party is the sixth kingdom? So this is quite new to me. But yes, I think that's correct. And I refer you to Elder Pominder's very latest studies, where he parallels 1798 with 1989. And yes, he takes the sixth kingdom from 1798. When he does line upon line, he drops the sixth kingdom to, I'll say, before 1989. And in the literal story of the king of the north, Babylon, okay, let me not get into that, don't worry. Sorry, scrap that idea. I'm not confident enough to explain it. Okay, second part of this question, I think. After winning at Panium, Antiochus was worried about the looming conflict with Rome. So I think you're saying, is that a conflict with the Republicans? So Antiochus is the king of the north, Panium, isn't he? Worried about a looming conflict with Rome. I'm just going to say I don't know, sorry. Sorry, I don't know. I'm just going to have to move on. My apologies. Okay, so someone's hit the nail on the head. So does it mean when Putin agrees to the peace deal, we mark the close of probation, Daniel 12? I'm going to say yes, but with a caveat. It seems like we're not sure what stage of the peace deal. And I don't even know enough about history and politics to say how fast these different stages occur. At the moment, it seems like they're just coming to the table. Okay, so we know we're not at Daniel 12:1 now. It seems like now they're going to start negotiating terms or conditions for a ceasefire. Then I guess they would basically go through different negotiations of how to end the war, stages. And then the war would end. So I don't know which stage would be Daniel 12:1. All I do know is that it's much sooner than I ever imagined. Don't do what I do. And use guesswork methodology. But my best guess is that the Ukraine war could actually end this year, within 1 year maybe. So I'm guessing or imagining Daniel 12:1 maybe at the end of this year, something like that. Has that scared you as much as it scared me? I thought to myself, oh, I better start behaving. Someone says, when they say peace and safety, it will be fulfilled. Someone else says, yes, someone else says also, it reminds me of when they say, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them. Okay, anything else? If not, I think we can close. Okay, let's close in prayer. Almighty God in heaven, we see the way you have led us in the past. And if we remember that, we know we have nothing to fear for the future. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
And thank you for getting up so early in the morning to be with us. We appreciate it.
I'm very unhappy about that. You're not forgiven.
Oh, Aaron, don't say that.
And I'm going straight back to bed now.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much. And thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for joining in and participating with us. God bless you all. To Aaron, God bless you as you continue to study out this truth and share more with us. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye. Yes.